Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We will get started now, inshallah. And we had a worksheet for lesson 1 and 2. We did most of the sentences in that worksheet, but there were a few that we did not get to. If you look about halfway down the page, it says correct any errors in the following phrases or sentences, and then vocalize or translate them. We did number 1 and 2, Rajulun Kabir, Imra'atun. We corrected that to Kabiratun. We did number 2, Shamsun Mudhi. We corrected to Shamsun Mudhi'atun because Shams is feminine. Qamarun Munirun is correct. And Ardun Madhi, we corrected to Ardun Madhiyya. Madhiyatun because it's feminine. So, number 3, can we have somebody volunteer to read and correct it? Anybody courageous enough to get the ball rolling and start us out? Go ahead. So, Inna Allah, and how did you read Allah? Inna Allah. When you have inna, remember, inna changes a sentence. So if we didn't have inna, we would say Allahu ghaniyun. But when inna comes, it changes one of the two parts of the sentence, the subject. It changes its i'rab. Inna Allaha, and then ghaniyun. And that it's Allaha because of inna. Right? The sentence before was Allahu ghaniyun, and it simply meant that God is free of need. When inna comes, there's emphasis. Verily God is free of need. And it changes from Allahu to Allaha. Inna Allaha ghaniyun. And what about the second sentence? Inna nasa faqirun. Is that correct as it stands, or is there a problem? So an-nas, is that singular or plural? In meaning it's plural, right? The people. And therefore, the predicate also needs to be plural. And the plural of faqirun is fuqara. And it happens to be غير munsarif, so we won't say fuqara'un, we'll say fuqara'u. Can we have a volunteer for the next sentence? Go ahead, sister. So, we had different opinions, and that's good, because it's always better to make a mistake than to not say anything at all. Right? So, if you give the wrong answer, you're a step ahead of the people who didn't give any answer at all. Hal Karbala'u. Ba'id needs to change, because Ba'id is describing what? Karbala. And Karbala is the name of a place, and therefore we treat it as feminine. So instead of ba'id, we will say ba'idatun. And you could ignore the hal. That's a sentence. Karbala'u ba'idatun. Karbala is far. Karbala is the subject, and it has a dhamma, no tanween, because it's ghair munsarif, does not accept tanween. Its predicate is ba'idatun. The only thing that hal does is it tells us it's a question. It doesn't change the sentence in any other way. It does not affect the i'rab. So Karbala ba'idatun. And then min Baghdad is just an added phrase that tells us something additional about what the person is asking. They're saying, is it far from Baghdad? Min Baghdad. Baghdad, what i'rab does Baghdad have? Is it marfu', mansub, or majroor? It should be majroor, and it is majroor. But because it is a place name, as we mentioned, most place names are feminine and they are generally ghair munsarif. So they don't accept kasra or tanween. And so it is majroor, but it doesn't show a kasra or a tanween. We don't say min Baghdadin. We say min Baghdad.
Why do we even say that? Why do we just say Baghdad?
You can say min Baghdad, but when you're practicing grammar, it's useful to say how each word ends and to vocalize the i'rab, just as a matter of practice.
What does hal mean?
Hal simply is a word that introduces a question. So you don't need to translate it. I apologize for the cough. But if you want to translate it, then you can translate it by saying, is it the case that, for example, is it the case that Karbala is far from Baghdad?
That doesn't have any impact on the i'rab.
The i'rab is not affected. So hal, it just turns a declarative sentence into an interrogative sentence. And the final sentence that we have in these series of sentences, can we have somebody to vocalize it for us? That is not a sentence. So, volunteer?
خرج زيد من المدرسة من باب قريب.
Okay, so we have hal kharaja Zaidu. Will it be do or dun? Zaydun. Right? There will be a tanween. Right? There's no reason why Zayd cannot accept tanween. So hal kharaja Zaydun, and it is marfu because it is the subject of the verb. It is doing the action. Zayd, did Zayd leave? Min al madrasa ti. Right? It's majroor because of the min. Min al madrasati. Why do we not say madrasatin here? Because of the alif lam. When there is an alif lam, there will never be a tanween. So we'll say min al madrasati. Min Babil Qarib. Here we have a problem. We can correct it by saying Min al Babil Qarib or Min Babin Qaribin. Right? Qarib is an adjective describing the door. Right? We want to say, did she leave from the near door or from a nearby door? Qarib is in any case describing Bab, and therefore they need to agree. If we're speaking about a specific door, we will say Al-Bab al-Qarib. And if it's a non-specific, indefinite door, we'll say Babin Qaribin. But they both have to agree, because every adjective will agree with the noun that it modifies. So we can say Min al-Bab al-Qarib. Qarib is the adjective, Bab is the noun that it describes. So let's take a look now at the exercises that are in the book for lesson 2, I believe we need to look at, correct? Page 13. And let's quickly go through these examples. Exercise A says that give the Arabic of the following phrases. A small boy. Waladun saghirun. And now depending on the sentence, it could be waladun saghirun, it could be waladin saghirin, or it could be waladan saghiran. Whatever it is though, they will all agree. So if it's the subject of a sentence, we will say waladun, and then saghirun will also be in the marfu' case. Whatever the case of walad is, the case of saghir will have to agree, because it's an adjective. In all of these examples, we will assume that we're speaking of the marfu' case. That's often treated as a default case in Arabic. How will we say the small boy? Al-waladu as-saghir. We will have to add the alif lam to both words. Al-walad as-saghir. It's the boy. The adjective will also be with alif lam. How will you say from the small boy? Min al-waladis saghiri. And notice that the i'rab of walad will become majroor, and the i'rab of saghir will also become majroor, because the adjective has the same i'rab as the noun. And how will you say for a small boy? Li waladin saghirin. Li waladin saghirin. There's no alif lam because we're speaking of a boy, not a specific boy. So it's li waladin saghirin. Will have the same i'rab. And notice that this lam is also a prefix. It's attached to the word, but it is a prefix, and it is one of the huruf al-jar, one of the prepositions that does give jar. So the case of walad is majroor. It's in the majroor case. All right, now let's have some new volunteers as well. How can we say an old woman? Imra'atun kabiratun. Imra'atun kabiratun. Kabira can mean old, can mean great, it can mean large. The context will tell what is meant. How will we say the old woman? Al-mar'atul kabiratu. Remember that the word imra'a, when alif lam comes, it changes to al-mar'a. The hamza is dropped. So we don't say al-imra'a, but we say al-mar'a. It's the same word, but it undergoes a change when the alif lam comes. Imra'a becomes al-mar'a. How will you say from an old woman? Min imra'a tin kabiratin. It will take a tanween because it's not a name, it's just a regular feminine noun. The adjective will also take tanween and it'll be majroor. Min imra'atin kabiratin. And how will you say to an old woman? Limra'atin kabiratin. And this hamza will not be pronounced because it is hamzatul wasl. We talked about that. So you will write li imra'atin kabiratin, but you won't say li imra'atin kabiratin. You'll say limra'atin kabiratin. How will we say a small hand? Yadun saghiratun. Thanks to those of you who remember that it is feminine, and therefore the adjective will also be feminine. Yadun saghiratun. How will you say the small hand? Al-yadu as-saghiratu. And how will you say in the small hand? Fil yadi as-saghirati. No tanween. Fil yadi as-saghirati. Because when there is alif lam, there will be no tanween. And then we have a large garden. Jannatun kabiratun. The more common word would be hadiqatun kabiratun. You can use hadiqa if you wish. Jannah is also acceptable. The large garden, let's use hadiqa here. Al-hadiqatu al-kabiratu. Ahsantu. It's a feminine word, so kabira will be feminine. Al-hadiqa has alif lam, it's a specific garden, so al-kabira will have alif lam. There will be tanween or no tanween? No tanween because of the alif lam. Al-hadiqatu al-kabiratu. And how about in a large garden? In is fi. Fi hadiqa tin. There will be a tanween here, right? Because there's no alif lam, there's no reason not to have tanween. Yes, so then you will add a sifat. It says in the large garden? Okay, so I did the last phrase first. This, you're right. The third phrase is in the large garden. It will be fil hadiqati al-kabirati. Right? There will be then no tanween because of the alif lam. And both the noun and the adjective will be definite, will have alif lam. And then finally, in a large garden, hadiqatin kabiratin. In the large garden is fil hadiqatil kabirati. And then in a large garden is fi hadiqatin kabiratin. The important point is to remember that in both cases, the alif lam will either appear on both noun and adjective, or it will not appear on both noun and adjective. There will be agreement between the two. So another example, a great prophet. Nabiyun. You can say Azim. Or you can say Kabir. It will be the same. So Nabiyun Azim. Mun. And we'll use Azim for this example. You could easily use Kabir, which is the word that was given in the vocabulary. The great prophet, An-Nabiyyu, Al-Azimu. If you used Kabir, it would be Al-Kabiru. No tanween in this case. For a great prophet, Li-Nabi, Li-Nabiyyin. First, get the noun correct. Li-Nabiyyin. And then the adjective, let's use Kabir now. Kabirin. Don't try to do all of it at once. Look at each part. Think, will there be alif lam or not? Will there be tanween or not? If yes, why? If no, why not? So li-nabiyyin, there's no reason for there not to be tanween. And then kabirin will simply agree with it. If you get nabi correct, then you will know how to say kabir, with or without tanween, with or without alif lam. For the great prophet. Lin-nabi, Lin-nabiyyi. You will have to say al. There's a dot there. Al-kabiri. Lin-nabiyyi al-kabiri.
I have a question. You say kabiri, right? And I know there's no ye, we don't extend re, but I know some people they say re. Is that proper or no?
The proper pronunciation is for the kasra to be the same sound as you have with a mad. The difference is only in how long you stretch it. So you should say لِلنَّبِيِّ الْكَبِيرِ without stretching it. And the last set of sentences we have a nearby city. What's the noun? Medina is the word for city. Balad is a more general town, township. So the word for city is Medina. And then what will the vocalization be? Madinatun. Qaribatun. That's the adjective.
Whenever I have a question, in Nabi, when there's a tanween, you don't have to make a alif to there's a tanween, you can put it on the
If there's a tanween on a word like Nabi, then it's like any other word. The tanween will show up on the last letter itself. Nabiyun azimun. If it is a tanween of fatha, then we will add an alif. So we'll say Nabiyan with an alif, Aziman with an alif, only for the tanween of fatha. So getting back to our last example, we have Madinatun Qaribatun. How will I say the nearby city? Al-Madinatu Al-Qaribatu. Al-Madinatu Al-Qaribatu. From the nearby city? Min al-Madinati Al-Qaribati. Because of the min. For the nearby city? للمدينة القريبة. Remember that when we add lam, the preposition, to a word that has alif lam, we drop the alif. So we write lam, the first lam is the preposition, harful jar. The second lam is the lam of the definite article. For the city. للمدينة القريبة. So let's go quickly now through the sentences, and they're already written in Arabic. We will simply vocalize and then translate. Please raise your hand if you would like to volunteer. Do not be afraid of making a mistake. I would like new volunteers. Today I might call on you if you don't raise your hand, especially if you try to hide. So let's begin in the front. Would you like to do the first one?
No. Yes.
Yes. Al-Ainu al-Kabiratu Qariba Qariba Tun, because it is the predicate of the sentence Al-Ainu al-Kabiratu Qaribatun, and there's no reason why it can't take tanween. Min al-Madina Min al-Madina T. Because of the alif lam, there will be no tanween.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Min al-Madina T. Tun.
Is a predicate?
Yes, qaribatun is the predicate.
The predicate would take
It'll be marfu because it's the khabar, the mubtada and the khabar. Subject and the predicate. There's no kana here. Therefore, it will be marfu. Both the subject and the predicate will be marfu. العين الكبيرة قريبة من المدينة. There are certain exceptions when the predicate or the subject will have their i'rab changed.
Because there is no.
If inna comes, then the predicate will be, the subject will be mansub. If kana comes, the predicate will be mansub. Otherwise, the normal rule is for both of them to be marfu', as we see in the sentence. Translation, quickly.
Great eyes. The great eyes.
One of the meanings of ayn is a spring.
Oh, okay.
So the large spring
Large spring is close to to the city.
is close to the city. Good.
Great.
And for our second sentence, all right, in the back, I'll read the word, you tell me the i'rab, because it's the i'rab that's important. Ready? Ready? Al-bint. Is our volunteer hiding? All right. Yeah, you're the volunteer. No, you're the volunteer. You didn't know it. Al-bint. Is there a reason why you chose al-binti? No, why T? Why with a kasra? With a jar? No reason? Any other? Al-bintu. Right? If you don't have a reason for a word to be in a specific case, then don't choose that case. By default, the first word in the sentence is likely to be a subject. It's more likely to be the subject of the sentence than anything else. So if you don't have an idea, start by reading it marfu. Start by reading it marfu, and then you could always change it if you find out that no, that's not the subject, it's something else. So start out by saying al-bintu as-saghira tu. Right? And that's easy now. Now that we know al-bintu is marfu', its adjective will also be marfu'. Qariba tun. Right? You're right, it is marfu' and it will have tanween because qariba has no alif lam, nothing preventing it from having a tanween. Qaribatun min al-mar'a ti. Min means that mar'a will be majroor. The young girl is close to the woman. Next sentence. خرج الولد الصغير من المدينة اليوم. اليوم, and that one is something that we haven't covered yet. But al-yawma will always be al-yawma. Yes, it'll be, here it is an adverb and it will be mansub. We'll talk more about that in the future, so don't get confused by that.
It's always going to be al-yawma.
Yeah, adverbs will be mansub, and so we'll say al-yawma, and we'll talk more about the details for that in the future. So you don't need to get confused by the al-yawma. Whenever you see it in examples, it will always be al-yawma, because it's describing when something happens, and when an adverb of time or place will always be mansub. But the important part of the sentence is al-waladu as-saghiru min al-madinati. Next one.
No, I have a question.
What's the question?
I'm kind of confused on the meaning. Like, what does the sentence mean?
Which, the third sentence?
Yes.
Kharaja, he left. And who left? Al-waladu as-saghir. The small boy left, the young boy left. Min al-madinati, from the city. Al-yawma, today. Next sentence. One of the sisters like to volunteer? All the way in the back. Inna al-hadiqa ta. because the subject of a sentence with inna will be mansoob. As-saghira ta, because this is an adjective. Qariba tun, this is the predicate. Min huna. Translation? Surely the small garden is close to here. Huna. Huna will never change. It's mabni, it never changes. Next sentence. Okay, next sentence. Inna fil hadiqa ti al-kabira ti. Next word. Aynan saghira tan. Now this sentence should not be confusing. You see inna, right? Inna means that there will be a subject and a predicate, and the subject will be mansoob. In this sentence, the subject happens to come not right after inna, but where? After the predicate. Right? Verily, in the small garden is, in the large garden is a small spring. We're still talking about a spring, and we're saying that spring is in a large garden. So the subject is aynan saghiratan. That's why it's mansoob.
So is there any particular reason you put the order like that? It's just because you want to emphasize one thing over the other?
There are reasons why the order will be inverted. And right now, you don't need to worry about what those reasons are. But in a sentence where the subject comes at the end, it will still take the i'rab of a subject. So it's not order that determines whether a noun is mansoob or marfu, it's the function. We're saying that there is a small spring in a large garden. Aynan is still the subject. Question? What is the question?
What if there's like a test and a person got confused on the word A? Is it like another word for spring or I?
Spring and I. The most common word is ayn. It can mean a spring. It can mean I. It can mean a prominent person. So you can say al-a'yan, the prominent people of a city. It can mean gold. It can mean the substance itself. It can mean a spy. It has many different meanings, the word ayn. And in all of those cases, it will be the context that tells you what meaning is intended. So you can't assume a particular meaning. Some of those meanings are related. Obviously, a spy is called a spy because they use their eyes. But some of the meanings, the relationship is not as clear. Next sentence. We have to move a little bit more quickly. Sure. Al-bin tu al-kabira tu fil madina ti. Right? Translation? The big girl is in the city. Al-bintul kabiratu fil madinati. Next sentence. Innal arda kabiratun. Innal arda kabiratun. Ard is the subject, so it's mansoob. Al-arda. Kabiratun is the predicate, so it's marfu. Innal arda kabiratun. Remember, inna requires the subject to be mansoob. Verily the earth is big. Next sentence. Go for it. Al-mar'a tu fil madina ti. And then al-layla here is also an adverb describing when, and it will be mansoob. Al-layla ta. Mansoob. The woman is in the city al-laylata, tonight. do not say fil madinati al-laylati, thinking that layla is an adjective. Night is not describing the city. It's not an adjective. It can't describe another word. So, al-mar'atu fil madinati al-laylata. Layla is, it's known in Arabic as maf'ul fi, and it's mansub. The next sentence. Go ahead. Al-Jannah tu lil mu'mini. Lil mu'mini. When there is a lam, preposition, harful jar, then the next word will be majroor. Al-Jannatu lil mu'mini. And then the last sentence, let's do this all together. لِلرَّجُلِ الْكَبِيرِ بِنْتٌ صَغِيرَةٌ. لِلرَّجُلِ الْكَبِيرِ بِنْتٌ صَغِيرَةٌ. For the large or the old man is a small girl. Now, no, for the old man or to the old man, or normally we would say that in English as the old man has a young girl. So remember that li, one of the meanings of it is to have, to own. So you can say, for example, لِزَيْدٍ كِتَابٌ. For Zayd is a book, or Zayd has a book. لِلرَّجُلِ الْكَبِيرِ بِنْتٌ صَغِيرَةٌ. For the old man, or the old man has a young girl. And then let's translate these into Arabic as quickly as we can. The small boy was here. Was. So we'll need to start with kana, the small boy. Al-waladu as-saghiru huna. What is the subject? Al-waladu as-saghiru, and that's why it will be marfu. What is the predicate? Huna. And it is mansub, but because it's mabni, it doesn't change. We won't say huna'a or anything else. Huna will always be huna.
Would a slave be a predicate?
No, because we're not saying the boy was small. We're saying the small boy, so it's part of the subject. We're telling you something about the small boy. What we're telling you is that he was here. We're not telling you that the boy was small. You already know the boy was small. So the subject and predicate is determined by, is it something that we're telling you about, or is it what we're telling you about something else? So al-waladu as-saghir together is the subject and huna is the predicate. The large city is close to a spring. The large city. Al-Madinatu Al-Kabiratu. Al-Madinatu Al-Kabiratu is close. Qaribatun min aynin. We're saying it's close to a spring. So we won't say al-ayn, because al-ayn means the spring. We don't know what spring it is. It's some spring, indefinite, unknown to us. Qaribatun min aynin, from a spring. In this sentence, what is the subject? Al-Madinatul Kabiratu. And the predicate is Qaribatun. It's Qaribatun. Question?
And couldn't you also mean gold? The large city was close to
is close to gold, yes. Ayn, it could mean any of the meanings of ayn. It could mean it's close to the prominent person, it's close to the eye, it's close to the spy, it's close to the spring. But normally when we're talking about geography, you don't say a city is close to an eye. You say a city is close to a spring. So the context would tell you what the meaning is. Min aynin, because ayn accepts tanween. The old man was a believer. So, those of you who started out by saying kana, good, because we want to put the sentence in the past tense. Kana ar-rajul al-kabiru, good. Mu'minan. Now in this case, because kana has come, the subject will be marfu', so we'll say ar-rajulul kabiru. But the predicate will be mansub, was a believer. So was kana mu'minan, and we will write an alif with the tanween. Is that clear? Why we said mu'minan? No. The reason is because of kana. When kana comes, kana is a verb, and it requires the subject to be marfu' and the predicate to be mansub. It's the opposite of inna. Whenever you see kana, the subject will be marfu', like it always is, like you would expect it to be, and the predicate will become mansub. So you can think of it like this. We had a sentence, Ar-rajul al-kabiru, ar-rajulul kabiru mu'minun. Right? We had that sentence. Ar-rajulul kabiru mu'minun. The old man is a believer. And that's a perfectly good sentence. The adjective agrees with the noun. The predicate is marfu'. And then kana comes on the sentence. Kana, you keep the subject as it is. But kana wants to have some effect on the sentence. It wants to leave its mark on the sentence. And what it does is it changes the predicate from being marfu' to being mansub. And you have to write it like this, with an alif. Number 4. Ahmad went out from the garden near the city. Now when you want to start a sentence like this, you do need to start with the verb, because the verb usually comes first in the Arabic sentence. So that's correct. You will say kharaja, right? Kharaja, and then bring us the subject, which would be Ahmadu. Now, Ahmad is one of those ghair munsarif nouns. It does not take tanween. It's marfu', but it just takes a dhamma. From the garden, minal hadiqati, near the city. Minal hadiqati, well, it's going to be an adjective, so if it's al-hadiqa, it should be al-qaribati, al-hadiqatil qaribati, min al-madinati, min al-madinati, correct. Question? Kharaja will make the subject marfu', but this verb does not have a predicate. Right? Kharaja is a verb that has a subject. Something leaves. But then there's nothing that is described by that verb in addition to the subject. So some verbs will have a subject and a predicate. It's a minority of verbs like that. Most verbs will have a subject and in some cases an object. Kharaja does not have an object. You don't leave something. You don't do kharaja to something. You don't exit something. In Arabic, you just exit. The subject will be the person doing the exiting, but there is no direct object. Normally you will indicate what you are leaving by saying min al-hadiqa, al-masjid, al-madrasa, whatever. Now, in some cases, a word in Arabic is used in more than one way, and we'll talk about that in the future. Question?
I want to know what the other meaning is. The second.
Good question. So, one is that Ahmadu is the subject, and the first min is describing what we exited, or what Ahmad exited. Kharaja Ahmadu min al-hadiqati. He left from the garden. The second min is describing what it was close to. Al-qaribati min al-madina. That was close to the city. In Arabic you say close from the city.
Oh, okay.
But in English you say close to the city.
Can you say near the city now?
No. You will have to say al-qariba min al-madina.
You can't say Hilal Medina.
No, in Arabic normally qarib is used with min. So you will say al-qariba min al-madina. Next sentence, the city has a great prophet. Now what is the expression that we use to say has li, right? So we will say lil madinati, the city, for the city, a great prophet, nabiyun kabirun. And it won't be an-nabi because we're saying a great prophet. So there will be no alif lam. Lil madinati nabiyyun kabirun. The small girl is a believer. The small girl is what? I will rewrite that to make it better. So, al-bintu as-saghiratu. Al-bintu as-saghiratu mu'mina tun. Al-bintu as-saghiratu mu'minatun. The subject will have alif lam, the small girl. Mu'minatun is the predicate and therefore it will not have alif lam. Is a believer. If some of these are not very easy for you to form right away, then take a look at them again when you go home and it'll become easier over time, trust me. There is a spring in the city. Now this is something that you have to rearrange in Arabic. And the way you will rearrange it in Arabic is by saying in the city is a spring. In the city will be what? Fil madinati. Right? And you will need the alif lam. Fil madinati. Aynun. Get used to the fact that in Arabic there is no word is. Fil madinati aynun. in the city is a spring. Question? Yes, you can say inna fil madinati aynan. That would be acceptable as well. The only difference is that when you add inna, the subject has to be mansoob. What is the subject in the sentence? Ayn. Because you're telling us something about a spring. You're saying that it is in the city. So either of these sentences would be fine. The woman has a small garden. What is the word for has? You will use the expression li. So you will say the woman. So lil mar'ati. So imra'a will change to al mar'a, and then you will add the lam lil mar'a for the woman. Right? In this case, that means the woman has a small garden. حديقة صغيرة. Now that we're done with what's easy, we'll move to the more difficult material that we want to cover for today. If you remember last week, we started talking about al-mudaf and al-mudaf ilay. Al-mudaf wal-mudaf ilay. If I want to say that something belongs in some way to something or someone else, right? Then I can say, for example, adhabun nari. What does that mean? Punishment of the fire. The fire's punishment, or punishment of the fire. Adhab is mudaf, and an-nar is mudaf ilay. The mudaf ilay is what owns something, or that to which something belongs, and al-mudaf is that which belongs to something. So al-mudaf is adhab, al-mudaf ilay is an-nar. Adhabun nar, punishment of the fire. Now the question is, what if you want to describe one of the words within this phrase? Right? If there's going to be an adjective. In Arabic, adjectives come after the noun. We already know that, right? So if I want to say a big punishment, I will say adhabun kabirun. But now if I want to say the big punishment of the fire, where will the adjective come? The adjectives will always come after the phrase. So the mudaf and mudaf ilay are not separated in Arabic. Adhabun nar, punishment of the fire, that will not be broken up. The adjective will come after. Al-azim. And it could refer to either the mudaf ilay or to the mudaf. Don't say that because it comes after the mudaf ilay, that's an adjective for the mudaf ilay. It might be an adjective of the mudaf. How will you know? Well, sometimes you'll have to just look at the context, but sometimes there will be clues. If the mudaf ilay is ma'rifah, is definite, then the mudaf will also be treated as definite, even if it doesn't have alif lam. Because obviously, if I say, for example, punishment of the fire, well, when the fire is definite, the punishment that belongs to that fire will also be definite. It's not just any old punishment, it's a punishment that belongs to the fire. Right? It's that punishment. It's not the punishment of the guillotine, it's not the punishment of solitary confinement or waterboarding, it's the punishment of the fire. So specific punishment. It doesn't have alif lam, but it is definite. So we can't say that the alif lam of al-azim is a context. Right? Al-azim has an alif lam, but an-nar is definite. Adhab is also definite, even though it doesn't have alif lam. What is the context? One context is i'rab. If I say al-azimu, is it possible for it to be an adjective of an-nar? No, because an-nar is a mudaf ilay and it will always be majroob. So if I say al-azimu, then this will be an adjective for adhab. Punishment that is great and that belongs to the fire. So the great punishment of the fire. Why do we know that it is an adjective describing adhab? Because of the marfu. So that's a very good context. But in Arabic, normally the i'rab is not written. So you're left with this. If somebody were generous enough to talk to you, then you could say that, well, he said adhabun naril azimu, so I know that it is describing adhab. Sometimes that doesn't work for you though. But there are other clues, and one clue is gender. In this case, an-nar is feminine, and adhab is masculine. So al-azim, even if you don't see the i'rab written, it cannot be an adjective describing nar, because any adjective describing nar will have to be feminine. So adhabun naril azim must be azimu, because it can only describe adhab. Adhab is masculine. An-nar is feminine. If I want to say the punishment of the great fire, I would say adhabun nar al-azima, al-azimati. Because in this case, al-azima is describing an-nar. It would be feminine because an-nar is feminine. So fire is feminine and the adjective will be feminine. So you have several clues that will tell you whether the adjective describes the mudaf or the mudaf ilayh. The meaning, the i'rab, if the i'rab is shown, and feminine or masculine, or the number. Right? So we can also have a case where the number is different. Let me just give an example of that. We can say, for example, رؤساء المجلس المؤمنون. رؤساء المجلس المؤمنون. In this case, رؤساء is plural and al-mu'minun is plural. Al-majlis is singular. Right? Ru'asa is the plural of ra'is, the heads, right, or the chiefs, the heads of the meeting or assembly or parliament. Al-mu'minun, who are believers. In this case, al-mu'minun obviously cannot be an adjective describing the parliament itself. First of all, an assembly or a parliament will not be believing or unbelieving. Second of all, it's singular and al-mu'minun is plural. Also in this case, al-mu'minun is marfu, and the marfu shows. The case shows because of the waw. And therefore, it cannot be an adjective of the mudaf ilayh, which is majrur. So sometimes the number, sometimes the gender, sometimes the i'rab, and sometimes just the context and the meaning will tell you what the adjective belongs to. Questions?
One question for al-mu'minun, can we have without al? Like Wasal, Majlisi, Mu'minun?
No, if you don't have an alif lam, then it cannot be an adjective for either part. Because if I have a specific parliament, if the parliament is known, then the chiefs of that parliament are as definite as the parliament itself. Right? Think of it as if I say Qubbatul Masjid. Qubbatul Masjid. Qubba means the dome. Right? If the masjid is known, its dome is just as known as the masjid itself is. So I can't say that al-masjid has alif lam, it's definite. But Qubba does not have alif lam, so it's not definite. Well, if it's the dome of that masjid, the same extent that you know the masjid is the extent that you know its dome. Or you know what dome is being referred to. So Qubba is ma'rifah as well. It doesn't have alif lam, but because of that idafa, Qubbatul Masjidi, it is also ma'rifah. And then the adjective that describes Qubba will also have to be feminine. And it will have to be definite. So al-khadra'u means green. And it's the feminine form of the word. Qubbatul Masjid al-khadra'u, the green dome of the masjid. If you want an easier example, you can say al-kabiratu. Qubbatul Masjid al-kabiratu, the large dome of the masjid. Kabiratu is not describing the masjid. It's describing the qubba, the dome, the large dome of the masjid. How do we know that? Well, first of all, it's feminine, and qubba is feminine. Masjid is not feminine. Second, it says Qubbatul Masjid, and it's al-kabiratu. They're both marfu. So, next question. There are some times where there will be no clues, and then you'll have to use your powers of guessing. So let's take a look at the examples at the bottom of the lesson. Right? Now, cover up the translation with your hand and just look at the Arabic. The first sentence says مفتاح السيارة الصغير. مفتاح السيارة الصغير. Is الصغير describing the miftah or the sayyara? Miftah. So is it the key of the small car or is it the small key of the car? The small key of the car. Saghir is describing miftah. The key is small and it belongs to the car. How do I know that Saghir is describing miftah? They have the dhamma. So miftahus sayyarati saghiru. Saghiru cannot describe sayyara because it's majroor. What else? Masculine. As-saghiru is masculine. It can describe miftah. It can't describe sayyara because sayyara is feminine. The second one is miftahu sayyarati saghirati. Obviously, in this case, the adjective is describing the car, the key of the small car. See the difference? Miftahu sayyarati saghiru describes the key. Miftahu sayyarati as-saghirati describes the sayyara. Now, what if the sentence is a little bit different? We have Miftahu sayyaratin. Now, Miftahu sayyaratin, what does that mean? No, Miftahu sayyaratin. Key of a car. The key of a car. Right? Miftahu sayyaratin. In this case, the car itself is unknown, is indefinite. So the keys are also indefinite. Both of them are indefinite. No, it's not غير منصرف. Miftah is munsarif, but whenever a word becomes mudaf, it cannot take tanween. So no mudaf word will take tanween. Miftahu sayyaratin. A car's key. And in this case, the adjective will also be then indefinite. Because the car is indefinite, therefore the key is also indefinite. So we'll say, if I say saghira, it will definitely be saghiratin because it's got to be describing the sayyara. Feminine adjective will be able to describe sayyara, it cannot describe miftah. So we will say sayyaratin, saghiratin, and is the car small or is the key small? The car is small. Miftahu sayyaratin saghiratin, the key of a small car. The key of a small car. Why is there no al? Because if there were an al, it would be the small car. And in this case, we're not talking about a specific car, we're talking about some car or other. You can add an alif lam, you can say miftahu sayyarati saghirati, but then it's a different sentence. It's saying the key of the small car.
So when you have possessive phrasing, because everything we've learned so far it's always been definite.
A possessive phrase can be definite or indefinite. It depends on whether the thing that owns the other thing is known or is unknown. You can say the house of a man, baytu rajulin, or you can say the house of the man, baytur rajuli. Depends on what you intend to say. Both are possible. So the mudaf ilay, the possessing noun, the owner, it can be either definite or indefinite. And whether it is definite or indefinite will determine whether the mudaf is definite or indefinite. The mudaf will not take alif lam, but you will know whether it's definite or indefinite based on whether the mudaf ilay is definite or indefinite. It will never be al-miftah. No. The mudaf will never be with alif lam. The mudaf will not have alif lam, but it might be definite if the mudaf ilay is definite. The mudaf will never take tanween. So let's look at a few more phrases. We have here لعبة الطفل الجميل. Now al-jamil, is that describing the tifl or is it describing the lu'ba? The tifl. And how do you know that? Lu'ba is feminine. So you'll say lu'batu tiflil jamilin. Lu'batu tiflil jamili. And you know that it's jamili because it has to be describing the mudaf ilay, at-tifl. If you want to say that it is the toy that is beautiful, you will say lu'batu at-tifl li al-jamila tu. Why al-jamila tu and not al-jamilati? Because it is describing al-lu'ba. It is not describing at-tifl. Lu'batu at-tifl al-jamila tu. And If the child is indefinite, then we will say لعبة طفل. If I add this adjective, jamil, it's jamilin because you know it's describing the طفل. طفل is masculine, لعبة is feminine. If I say jamil, it's an adjective for طفل. And it will take the same i'rab. It is the toy of a beautiful child. قميص الولد الأسود. قميص الولد. If I say aswade, then it's the boy that is black. The shirt of the black boy. If I say al-aswadu, then it is the black shirt of the boy. In Arabic, the word aswad does not have the same connotation, especially in classical Arabic, it does in English. So you can say al-abyad, al-aswad, and it's not considered to be inappropriate. It's simply a description of the skin color. It doesn't have the same category of race that it would in English. In modern Arabic or in modern society, that might be slightly different. But qamisul waladil aswadu, the shirt of the black shirt of the boy, if it's aswadu.
Another question. Do we say black shirt of the boy or we say the black shirt of the boy?
You could say the black shirt, probably because of the black shirt of the boy. And if the mudaf ilayh is indefinite, you will say qamisu waladin. You can say qamisu waladin aswadu. That would mean the black shirt of a boy. Or you can say qamisu waladin aswada. Now, please correct the notes. I didn't catch it earlier, but aswad is ghair munsarif. Aswad, just like the word akbar, asghar, and other similar words, it cannot take a kasra or a tanween. So if you are describing walad as a mudaf ilayh, qamisu waladin, then it will be aswada. Why aswada? Because it is ghair munsarif. When it is majroor, then that jar will show itself with a fatha. Qamisu waladin aswada. How would you say a black boy's black shirt? So you will say qamisu waladin aswada aswadu. The mudaf ilayh and its sifa, its adjective, will come together, and then the adjective for the mudaf will come at the end. Qamisu waladin aswada aswadu. That will almost never be done though. Right? You will find another way to say it. And what you will say is usually qamisun aswadu li waladin aswada. You will add a lam. Right? So it's grammatically correct to say this. And sometimes you will find this type of phrase, but normally, just to keep things together, you will have qamisun aswadu li waladin aswada. So there won't be an idafa anymore. Right? Because any idafa can be reworded as a phrase with lam. Right? If I say lu'batu tiflin, the toy of a child, I can say lu'batun li tiflin, a toy for a child or of a child. So you can reword things without the idafa if you need to. Question?
Just a question. You said abyad for white.
You say abyad for white, yes. Now what happens though is that sometimes the mudaf itself is majroor. So even if the i'rab is written, it does not help you. And the example for that is min kitab al-rajul al-azim. Min kitab al-rajul. Well, azim will definitely be azimi, whether it describes kitab or whether it describes al-rajul, because both of them are majroor. Remember, the mudaf ilayh will always be majroor. But the mudaf can have any i'rab. It will depend on what its function is in the sentence. If the mudaf is the subject of a sentence, it will be marfu'. If it is the object of a sentence, it can be mansoob. In this case, there is a min before it, and so it is majroor. Min kitabir rajul al-azim. So you have no way of knowing whether it is the great book of a man or whether it is the book of a great man. They are both majroor. Context will tell you which one azim is describing. And only context. And so, to answer the question you had earlier, yes, sometimes there will be no clues, because even the i'rab will not help you. In some cases also, the i'rab will not show up in a word, and in that case as well, you will need to use context. If the word is, say, mabni, or the word is one of those words where the i'rab does not show, then you will need to use context. Questions? No, azim, nothing will come between mudaf ilayh. The mudaf ilayh is one unit. If the book is great, then this is how you will say it. Min kitab al-rajul al-azim. Even if the azim, this adjective is describing kitab, it will be found at the end. Mudaf and mudaf ilayh are treated as one unit. They cannot be separated. That is why even the tanween is dropped. So normally you will say kitabun, right? But if I want to say the book of the man, I won't say kitabun al-rajuli, I'll say kitabur rajuli. Even that tanween, which is kind of a separation, is dropped. Kitabur rajul is treated as one word. Nothing will come between it. If I want to say it's a great book, then I will add it at the end and I will say al-azimu. So always remember that the adjective will come after the mudaf and mudaf ilayh together. The mudaf and mudaf ilayh are one unit and are not separated.
If you want to describe both of them, say azim book of
Yeah, we did have that question before, but because that was a different example, I'll repeat it with this example. If you want to describe both, then, and here I will write it, there's two ways to say it. You can say Kitab Rajul al-Azim مفيد. كتاب الرجل العظيم المفيد. In this case, the first adjective is going to the closest noun, and then the second adjective is going towards the mudaf. كتاب الرجل العظيم, the book that is beneficial, that belongs to the great man. So when you have to describe both, if you keep the idafa phrase, then you will put the adjective describing the mudaf after the adjective describing the mudaf ilayh. You will keep the closest ones together. So Kitabur Rajul, Al-Azimi describes Rajul, Al-Mufidu describes Kitab. But the better way to say it will be, or the more common, will be something like this. Al-Kitabul Mufidu للرجل العظيم. And in this case there is no idafa. The meaning of the idafa is preserved because you say the beneficial book of the great man. In this case, le means of. So we do have some time and we do want to get to the next lesson. Please take a look at the notes that were passed out at the beginning of class today. We're going to talk about the dual. In Arabic, that is known as al-muthanna or al-tathniya. The dual. There were some extra handouts and they will be in the back. If you don't have one, then raise your hand and you can have one passed to you. In Arabic, to indicate two of a noun, you don't need to say two books, for example. You don't need to bring a number to describe two. There is a separate form of the There's a separate form of the noun that describes two. So just as I can say, for example, Rajul means man, I can say Rajulane or Rajulaine means two men. I don't need to use the number two because that form, Rajulane or Rajulaine, means two. It's only used when there's two. And there will either be an alif noon ending or a ya noon ending. The alif noon is used if it is marfu'. The ya noon is used if it is mansub or majroor, for both. When there is a ya, note that there will be a fatha before it. And whenever there is a dual, the noon will always have kasra. Rajula ni. Rajulay ni. The kasra on the noon is not because it's majroor. It's just the way the form is. The i'rab will be shown by either an alif or by a ya. So if I want to say two men left, I will say kharaja rajulane, because it's the subject. It will be marfu'. I will say rajulani. If I want to say that I hit two men, I'm on a violent streak. Barabtu, now here it is an object, rajulaini. Don't try that at home. Barabtu rajulaini, because it is the direct object, it will be mansub. And in this case, there will be a ya noon ending. Rajulani marfu, rajulaini is mansub. If it's majroor, then you will say, for example, min rajulaini, from two men. Min rajulaini. So you will say either rajulani or you will say rajulaini, depending on whether it is marfu or whether it is mansub or majroor. The majroor and the mansub form are the same. The kasra on the noon tells you nothing about the i'rab. If a noun is feminine and it ends in ta, then you will change the way that ta is written. So for example, the word imra'ah, which ends in ta marbuta, you will keep the ta, but you will write it now as a regular ta. You will say imra'a tani. And that is not how you will write it. You will write it like this. Imra'atani. Or imra'ataini. So that ta will be converted from ta marbuta to ta mabsuta, a regular ta. You can look at the examples that we have in the notes. Rajul is the singular. The dual is rajulane or rajulaine. Muslim means one Muslim. Muslimane or muslimaine means two Muslims. Imra'ah means one woman. Imra'atane or imra'ataine means two women. Muslimatane, muslimataine, two Muslim women. The Arabic word for two is ithnane or ithnaine if it's masculine, or ithnatane or ithnataine if it's feminine. Ithnani, ithnaine, ithnatane, ithnataine. And if you need for emphasis, you can use those words. So you can say ja'a rajulane ithnane. Why did I say ithnane? Because it's describing rajulane. Rajulane is the subject, and so it's marfu. I said rajulane. I did not say rajulaine. The adjective will also be marfu. But you don't need to say ithnane. Yeah. Two men came. Right? It's emphatic. And normally you don't need to talk that way.
The dual is only for two.
For two.
Not three or four, more than four. Not the dual.
The dual is only for two. Right? And if you want to take one more example, you can say dakhaltul madrasataini al-ithnataini. Dakhal, that should be there. Dakhaltu, I entered. This is now the direct object. What did I enter? The two schools. So I will say madrasatane or taine. Taine, because it's the object, it's mansub. Al-madrasataine. And then the adjective will also be mansub. Al-ithnataine. The ya is because it's mansub. The ta is because it's feminine. And there will be another fa. So there is the word ithnane or ithnaine, ithnatane or ithnataine that will be used in some cases, but normally the dual noun by itself is enough
that case, do you have to use it, or
You do not have to use the word ithnani or ithnatani. No, it will not be required. And normally it won't be used. The only time it'll be used is if you want to emphasize something. Right? All of you are familiar with certain words that are in the dual form. Walidane or walidaine. Right? Mean parents. Right? Al-Hasanane or Al-Hasanaine mean the two Hassans, which is how sometimes Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein were referred to, the two Hassans. And there are many other cases like this where there are dual forms that are used.
So it is always with the alif lam, al-Hasanain or al-Hasanan.
Al-Hasanan and Al-Hasanain will always be used with alif lam. Always will be used with alif lam. Because now it's no longer the name, but it's saying the two people who share this name. And so you will say Al-Hasanane, Al-Hasanain. You could say, for example, Al-Muhammadani as well. Or Al-Muhammadaini, if there are two people. So if I say Ja'a Muhammad ibn Zayd wa Muhammad ibn Amr. Muhammad the son of Zayd came and Muhammad the son of Amr came. So two Muhammads came. And then I can say Dhahab al-Muhammadan. The two Muhammads left. Similarly, a noun can be made plural. So, for example, and sometimes in hadith works, you will hear reference to al-Muhammadun, al-Thalatha. The three Muhammads. Because out of the three works of hadith that were written in the Shia world, the three main works of legal hadith, 4 works, they were written by 3 different authors, all of them shared the name Muhammad. So Al-Kafi was written by Muhammad ibn Ya'qub al-Kulayni. Man la yahduruhu al-Faqih was written by Muhammad ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn al-Saduq. And then 2 books, Al-Tahdhib and Al-Istibsar, were written by Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Tusi. All 3 of them who wrote the 4 books were named Muhammad, so they are known as Al-Muhammadun al-Thalatha. And they can be referred by other names as well. But the point here was that a name can be made dual or plural to refer to more than one person who shares that name. And in that case, the alif lam will be used. Question on what we've covered so far? The adjective agreement athalatha, we'll talk about it later. So why is it athalatha? We'll talk about that later.
Can you use, if you're talking about 2 things, can you use plural instead of dual?
Can you use a plural for referring to 2 things? Yes. That is done in Arabic because the minimum for the plural is 2. So in Arabic you have a singular which only refers to 1. You have a dual which only refers to 3. You have a plural which normally refers from 3 on up, but sometimes can be used to refer to 2. You don't need the dual, but it is used in Arabic almost always in classical Arabic to refer to 2 things. There are some exceptions, and it is possible to use the plural to refer to 2 things, but it is rare. I want to just quickly introduce the sound plural. Al-Jam' Al-Mudhakkar Al-Salim. Right? The sound plural can be either masculine or feminine. We will do the feminine inshallah next week, but we'll do the masculine sound plural this week. And it's very simple. Basically, you take a word like Muslim and you add either a waw noon or a ya noon. So it will be either Muslimuna or Muslimina. the letter before the ending will agree with the ending. So you'll have a mad. Muslimuna or muslimina. The noon in this case will be maftuh. So the point to remember is that if you see a word like this, it could be muslimaini, in which case it would be dual, or it could be muslimina, in which case it would be plural. It's written the same way, but the dual, remember the letter before it will have a fatha, the noon itself will have a kasra, muslimaini. If it's plural, the letter before it will have a kasra, the noon itself will have a fatha. There's no haraka written, it'll be the same. And the same rule applies. The waw noon is for marfu. The ya noon is for both mansub and majroor. So Muslim becomes muslimun or muslimin. Mu'min becomes mu'minuna or mu'minina. And we will end there, inshallah. We will resume with the feminine sound plural next week. Can end with the salawat. Thank you. By now, I hope everybody has somebody that you have decided to study with. Please do take that seriously, because attending a class and not reviewing with somebody will just pile up and it won't become easier. So make sure that you have somebody that you are studying with every week. If you're not able to meet in person, then you can do it over the phone. If you don't have a single person, then make a group of 3 people, up to maybe 4 or 5 people. But if you keep